What if the fastest car of the preseason was not only scaring Red Bull and Ferrari, but also setting off alarm bells within the FIA? In the second week of testing in Bahrain, the MCL40 not only set the pace, it showed something different, something strange. An almost perfect combination of fast cornering stability, immediate tire activation, and a straight-to-corner aerodynamic transition that, under these regulations, simply shouldn't be so clean. The data from Piastri's car forced the FIA to open new technical tests even before the start of the season. Revised telemetries, flexibility under magnifying glass, energy management analyzed to the millimeter. And at the center of it all, Andrea Stella, amazed by the true extent of the potential they had unlocked. Are we seeing the birth of the dominant car of the year, or the beginning of a regulatory storm that could change everything before the first race? The second week of testing in Bahrain was not a simple confirmation of pace. It was the moment when the MCL40 stopped being a mystery and began to become a real threat. Not because of an isolated time in the table, not because of an attempt to qualify with low fuel, but because of something much more worrying for the rest: consistency. From the first long runs, especially in Piastri's car, the McLaren showed stability that did not seem to suffer from the typical degradation peaks that we are used to seeing in the preseason. In conditions where other cars fluctuated between oversteer on entry and understeer on exit, the MCL40 seemed neutral, predictable, controlled. And that, under this regulation, is not normal. What caught the most attention was not only the average pace per lap, but the way in which they achieved it. The car did not need extreme preparation laps to activate tires. It did not seem to suffer, especially in the thermal transition of the compound. And on a circuit like Sakir, where abrasion and thermal management punish any small imbalance, that is a very powerful technical signal. Furthermore, at high speed the car showed particularly solid behavior at the rear axle. The rear did not seem to breathe under maximum aerodynamic load, something we did see in other teams. That stability allowed drivers to keep the throttle open longer without constant micro-corrections, reducing tire stress and stabilizing pace. But here comes the key point: the car was also efficient on the straight. That combination of fast cornering load and competitive top speed is what begins to raise questions. Because normally when you win on one side, you lose on the other. In Bahrain, McLaren did not seem to pay a clear price. Internally, Andrea Stella would have been surprised by the real scope of the package. Not because of a lack of confidence, but because the correlation between simulation and track was practically perfect. When a car performs exactly as you projected in the wind tunnel and CFD, it means the concept is working at its highest level. But that same level is what arouses suspicion. Because in the paddock, nobody gives away half a second in regulatory evolution without there being a deep explanation behind it. The second week in Sakir left three internal conclusions at McLaren. First, the car has a solid base to fight from the start. Second, the scope for development exists, but the concept is already highly optimized. Third, the level of external attention will increase. And so it was. What seemed like a positive preseason began to transform into a technical focus. Because when a car is good, you notice it. But when a car seems too complete, it is investigated. What happened after the second week in Bahrain was quiet, but deeply significant. There was no alarmist statement. There were no public accusations. But there was something much more important. New technical tests opened by the FIA focused specifically on the behavior of the MCL40. And that changes the scenario completely. The review was not triggered by a suspicious visual element. It was not a piece that was clearly out of regulation. It was data analysis, complete long-run telemetry, comparisons of downforce at high speed, evaluation of the structural behavior of the hind wing under stress, detailed study of energy management in curve-straight transition, especially in Piastri's car. The point that generated the most interest was the duality of the car. At Sakir, the MCL40 showed an extremely stable rear in fast corners, but at the same time released speed on the straight without a visible drag penalty. Such a clean transition between high load and straight line efficiency is, under this regulation, extremely complex to achieve. That's where the gray area begins. The FIA began reviewing three key areas. First, aerodynamic flexibility. Not in terms of direct illegality, but in how certain elements could be working within the permitted structural limit to optimize dynamic behavior under load. Second, hybrid power management. The electric deployment, combined with corner exit traction, seemed particularly effective. Not explosive, not erratic, just too consistent. Third, the correlation between simulation and track. When a car shows performance almost identical to that projected in CFD and tunnel, with no visible mismatches, it indicates that the concept is extremely fine-tuned. And when it's so fine-tuned, other teams start to wonder where the secret is. The important thing here is that we are not talking about a sanction. We are talking about preventive scrutiny. But in Formula One, scrutiny is pressure. Because if the FIA decides to issue a technical clarification or reinterpret a point in the regulations, even a small adjustment can force key components to be modified. And McLaren does not plan to radically change the car for the start of the season. What we saw in Bahrain is the real basis of the project. There is the tension. Andrea Stella not only has to manage a fast car. You must manage the possibility that any gray areas you are exploiting may be closed before you consolidate competitive advantage. And politically, the moment is delicate. McLaren is already coming off seasons where it was under analysis for technical gray areas. Being back on the radar before the campaign starts means that every millimeter of the MCL40 will be examined. The second week in Bahrain made one thing clear. McLaren is not only competitive, it is the reference point. And when you become a technical reference in modern Formula One, you automatically become a target for analysis. The question is no longer whether the car is fast. The second week in Bahrain not only left impressive data, it left a feeling inside McLaren that is even more dangerous than a sanction. The awareness that they are now in the center of the board. Because when a team surprises, it generates enthusiasm. But when a team surprises too much, it generates vigilance. And that's exactly where the MCL40 is at. Andrea Stella is not simply managing a competitive car. You are managing expectations, political pressure, and the constant risk that any technical reinterpretation will force you to modify the basis of the concept just before the start of the championship. What we saw in Sakir was not an experimental version. It was the real architecture of the 2025 project. That means that any regulatory adjustment would directly impact the heart of the car. Internally, the challenge now is multiple. First, maintain performance without raising further suspicions. Because every dominant long run in Melbourne will be closely watched. Every fast corner advantage will be compared. Each top speed will be analyzed. Second, protect reliability. In Bahrain, the car was solid, but preseason is not a race. Such an aerodynamically optimized package can become delicate if the operating window narrows. Third, manage the relationship between pilots. If the car really has a high roof, the internal competitive pressure increases. And that, under external scrutiny, can generate strategic tensions. And fourth, the political front. In Formula One, when you are a reference, other teams push in the background. They request clarifications. They raise technical queries. They push the FIA to review details. Not because they have evidence, but because they seek competitive balance. The big question is this: has McLaren found a brilliant interpretation of the regulations? Or has it simply executed the same concept better than anyone else? Because the difference between genius and illegality in this sport is usually a line of just millimeters. The second week in Bahrain made it clear that the MCL40 is fast. But he also made it clear that this performance comes accompanied by structural pressure that can affect strategic decisions from the first race. Stella knows that the real exam was not the test. The real test begins when the FIA finishes reviewing each data. The second week of testing in Bahrain did not leave a simple headline like, "McLaren is fast." It left something much deeper and much more disturbing for the rest of the grid. It left the feeling that the MCL40 has found an extremely efficient window of performance within a regulation that, in theory, was already exploited to the maximum. We didn't see a nervous car. We didn't see a car dependent on a magic turn. We didn't see a car that shined only in qualifying simulation. We saw consistency. We saw stability. We saw an aerodynamic transition that did not seem to pay a price. And that was enough for the FIA to activate new technical reviews even before the season officially starts. This is where the real tension is born. Because McLaren not only has to prove that it is fast, you have to demonstrate that that performance is completely sustainable under scrutiny. And when the magnifying glass is on, any detail can become a focus of political pressure. Andrea Stella knows that the biggest challenge is no longer finding tents. It is to protect what they have found. The basis of the MCL40 is already defined. There will be no radical changes before the first race. That means that what we saw in Sakir is the real DNA of the project. And if that DNA withstands the FIA's technical analysis, McLaren can start the championship with a very serious structural advantage. But if the FIA decides to reinterpret any gray area, the story may change before the traffic light goes out for the first time. Bahrain was not just another preseason test. It was the moment when McLaren went from aspiring to a technical reference. And when you become a reference in Formula One, you also become a target. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.